There's a bridge in Kentucky where people go to die. Not by choice. At least, not consciously. It's an 810-foot railway trestle built in 1925, spanning Poplar Creek just outside Louisville. The locals call it Pope Lick Trestle, but they call it something else, too. The Goatman's Bridge, because for over 70 years, something has lived there. Something with horns that twist like iron lightning, hooves that spark on metal, eyes that burn yellow in the dark, and a voice that knows your name before you ever speak it. Since the 1,950 seconds, bodies have been found on those tracks, crushed, broken, twisted. The official reports say they were hit by trains, just accidents, trespassers who made a fatal mistake. But the survivors? They tell a different story. They say the Goatman called to them, whispered their names from inside their own heads, made them walk forward, step by step, even as the freight train screamed toward them doing 60 miles an hour. They say they wanted to stay on those tracks, that something was pulling them forward, that they heard hooves, saw eyes, felt breath on the back of their necks. Tonight, we're going to that bridge. We're going to uncover what 70 years of tragedy, folklore, and unexplained phenomena reveal about one of America's most persistent and most dangerous legends. We're going to talk to survivors, examine the evidence, explore the science behind psychological manipulation, and ask the question no one wants to answer. What if it's real? But I'll warn you now. Some questions don't have answers. Some mysteries prefer to stay unsolved. And some legends are hungry. Before we step onto that trestle, I need you to do something for me. If you want to survive the stories we hunt on this channel, you need to be prepared. Hit that subscribe button right now. Because the legends we cover don't stop at one video. They follow you home. They wait in the dark. They whisper your name when you're alone. Ring that notification bell. Arm yourself with knowledge. Because what you're about to hear, some of you won't finish this video. You'll click away. You'll tell yourself it's just a story. But deep down, you'll know better. Now, let's meet the monster. Let me take you to a place where mythology and geography collide, where the modern world and ancient fear meet on a structure built for progress but claimed by something far older. Pope Lick Trestle sits in the Fisherville area of eastern Louisville, Kentucky, just south of where Interstate 265 hums with modern traffic. Built by the Louisville and Nashville Railroad in 1925, it's a towering skeleton of iron and rust, 810 feet long, suspended 90 feet above Poplar Creek. It's not the height that kills you, though. It's the exposure. There are no walkways, no railings, no safety features whatsoever. Just 8 inches of clearance on either side of the active train tracks. If a freight train comes while you're crossing, and they come regularly, without warning, you have exactly 2 choices. Jump 90 feet to your death, or flatten yourself between the rails and pray the undercarriage doesn't catch your body and drag you screaming beneath 10,000 tons of steel. Most people choose wrong. But here's what makes Pope Lick Trestle different from every other dangerous location in America. Here's why it's not just a hazard, but a phenomenon. People keep going back, decade after decade, generation after generation. Despite the no trespassing signs plastered every 50 feet, despite the deaths reported in newspapers, despite the warnings shouted by parents, police officers, and paranormal investigators, despite the fences, despite the patrols, despite common sense screaming at them to turn around, they keep climbing that fence. They keep walking onto those tracks because they've heard about him. The Pope Lick Monster, the Goatman, the thing that guards the bridge. Some say he's 9 feet tall, with fur the color of dried blood and horns that twist toward the sky like the devil's own crown. Others describe a man's muscular torso grafted onto a goat's legs, half naked, filthy, powerful, with cloven hooves that strike sparks from the railroad ties and eyes that glow like brake lights cutting through fog. And then there's his voice. Survivors say it doesn't sound like an animal. It doesn't sound like a man either. It sounds like you, like your own thoughts, like a memory you can't quite place, tugging at the edges of your consciousness, pulling you forward one step at a time until you're standing in the center of the trestle and the train is already screaming around the bend and you realize with perfect, crystalline horror that you can't remember why you're there or how to make your legs move backward. But where did this legend come from? Why here, at this specific bridge, in this specific town? And why, after 70 years of deaths and warnings and investigations, does it refuse to die? To answer that, we need to go back, way back, to a time when goatmen weren't legends at all. They were gods. Before there was the Pope-lick monster, there was Pan. In ancient Greece, Pan was the god of the wild, half man, half goat, playing his pipes in untamed forests, dancing with nymphs, and striking terror into travelers who wandered too far from civilization. The Greeks believed that if you were alone in the wilderness and suddenly felt overwhelming, irrational fear with no obvious source, that was Pan. He was near, watching, amused by your panic. The word panic comes directly from him, from that primal, animal terror that grips you when you're alone in the woods and you hear something moving through the underbrush that shouldn't be there. When every instinct in your body screams at you to run, but you're frozen, because somehow you know that running will make it chase you. Pan wasn't evil. Not exactly. He was wild, unpredictable, dangerous in the way that nature itself is dangerous. He existed in that liminal space between civilization and chaos, between safety and the unknown. But he wasn't safe. Not by a long shot. As Christianity spread across Europe during the Middle Ages, those old pagan gods were systematically rebranded. The church needed a visual representation of evil, and Pan's horns, hooves, and connection to wild, uncontrolled nature made him the perfect template. Pan's image became Satan's image. The Goatman transformed from a god of nature into a demon of hell. Those horns that once crowned a deity now marked the servants of darkness, and suddenly, every forest, every crossroads, every lonely bridge became a place where goatmen might lurk, waiting to corrupt souls and drag sinners into damnation. And here's the thing about bridges. Throughout human history, across every culture, bridges have been considered liminal spaces, threshold places, between one land and another, between safety and danger, between the world of the living and whatever waits on the other side. It's why so many cultures have bridge guardian myths, trolls under bridges in Scandinavian folklore, bridge spirits in Japanese tradition, ghostly gatekeepers in Celtic legend. The bridge represents transition, transformation, and risk. Cross it, and you might not be the same person on the other side. If you make it to the other side at all, fast forward to 20th century America. The frontier was officially closed. The wilderness had been mapped, fenced, and tamed. But the legends adapted. They found new homes, new hunting grounds. In 1957, Lake Worth, Texas, teenagers parking near Greer Island reported a 7-foot-tall goatman with scales and fur leaping onto their car, scratching the roof, throwing a tire through their windshield. Police investigated, found tracks, found physical evidence, never found the creature. In 1971, Prince George's County, Maryland, the Goatman of Beltsville, attacking couples in parked cars, slaughtering dogs, disappearing into the woods before authorities arrived. Multiple witnesses, consistent descriptions, no captures, no explanations. And here, in Kentucky, at a trestle built for trains but guarded by something much, much older. But the Pope-lick monster isn't just reported, it's witnessed, again and again and again, with details that remain consistent across decades, across generations, across witnesses who never met each other and never compared stories. Let's start with the first documented encounter, the one that set the pattern, the one that proved this wasn't just folklore. This was something real. The year was 1953. A Boy Scout troop from Louisville was camping near Poplar Creek, not far from the Trestle. It was late August, hot, humid, suffocating. The kind of Kentucky summer night where the air feels like it's trying to drown you and sleep comes in fitful, sweaty intervals. One of the scouts, we'll call him Danny, woke up around 2 in the morning. Not because of a sound, because of a smell. Copper. Rot. Something fundamentally wrong. He lay in his sleeping bag for several minutes, trying to convince himself it was nothing. Just the creek. Maybe a dead fish. Maybe his imagination working overtime in the dark. But the smell got stronger, heavier, until it felt like it was coating the inside of his mouth. He unzipped his tent and crawled outside. The campsite was quiet. The other scouts were still sleeping, their tents dark lumps in the moonlight. The scoutmaster's lantern was out. Everything was still, except for the smell. Danny grabbed his flashlight and followed the scent downstream along the creek bank, his bare feet squishing in the mud. The beam of his flashlight cut through the darkness, catching tree trunks, rocks, the glint of water, and then he saw them, 3 sheep, or what was left of 3 sheep. They were scattered across the creek bank like broken toys, torn apart, not eaten, destroyed, ribs cracked open like cage doors, white bone gleaming in the flashlight beam, organs pulled out and scattered across the mud, heads missing entirely, ripped clean from the necks. Danny stood there, frozen, his flashlight shaking in his hand. His brain couldn't process what he was seeing, couldn't make sense of the violence, the thoroughness, the sheer rage required to do this to 3 animals. Wild dogs, he thought desperately. Must be wild dogs. Or a bear. Do they have bears in Kentucky? Please let it be a bear. And that's when his flashlight swept across the tree line, and he saw the eyes. Yellow, glowing, reflective like an animal's eyes, but too large, too high off the ground, too intelligent. The thing stepped forward. Just 1 step. Just enough for Danny to see the silhouette against the darker black of the forest. Shoulders like a man, broad, muscular, powerful. But the torso was too long, the proportions wrong. And the legs bent backward at the knee like an animal's haunches. Goat legs, ending in hooves. And on its head, rising from the skull like twisted iron, 2 curved horns caught the moonlight. It didn't charge. It didn't roar or snarl or make any sound at all. It just stood there, watching him, with those yellow eyes that seemed to glow from within, like embers burning in the skull. Danny doesn't remember deciding to run. He just remembers being back at camp, diving into his tent, zipping it shut with shaking hands, burying himself in his sleeping bag even though the night was sweltering. He doesn't remember breathing. He just remembers his heart slamming against his ribs like it was trying to escape his body. He didn't sleep. He waited for dawn with his eyes squeezed shut, listening for footsteps, for breathing, for the scrape of hooves on dirt. When the sun finally came up, he told the scoutmaster, told him about the sheep, about the eyes, about the thing in the trees. The scoutmaster clearly thought Danny had a nightmare, but he humored him. They walked downstream to check. The sheep were real. The scoutmaster's face went pale. He told the boys to pack up camp immediately, told them not to talk about what they'd seen, called the police from the ranger station. The local paper ran a story 3 days later. Livestock slaughtered near Pope Lick Trestle. The article blamed wild dogs, feral animals, said the area was known for predator problems. But Danny knew better, and he never went near that trestle again. Not once in 70 years, because he knew what he saw. He knew what was watching him from those trees, and he knew it let him leave. Okay, quick reality check. If you're sitting there thinking, I would definitely investigate those glowing yellow eyes in the woods at 2 a.m., congratulations. You're the first person to die in every horror movie ever made. Do yourself a favor and subscribe to this channel right now. Consider it survival training for when your curiosity tries to get you killed. Hit that subscribe button. Smash the like button if you think Danny made the right call by running. Also drop a comment below. Would you have gone looking for the source of that smell? Be honest. The Goatman's watching your answer. Now, let's talk about what happened 40 years later, when someone didn't run fast enough. August 1993. Christina Butts was 17 years old, fearless, and absolutely convinced that the Pope Lick monster was just a story designed to scare kids away from trespassing on railroad property. She'd heard the legend her whole life. Every teenager in Louisville had. The bridge, the creature, the deaths. It was the kind of story you told at sleepovers to make your friends scream. The kind of dare you made when you wanted to prove how brave you were. Christina wanted to prove how brave she was. So one humid Saturday night in late August, she and 3 friends, David, Megan, and Josh, decided to cross the trestle, walk from one end to the other, maybe spray paint their initials on the far side, take some photos, prove once and for all that it was safe, that the legend was bullshit, that they were too smart and too cool to be scared of some made-up monster. Teenage immortality, right? That beautiful, dangerous feeling that nothing bad can possibly happen to you. They parked David's car on the access road around dusk, climbed the chain-link fence that was supposed to keep people out, and started walking onto the trestle. Christina led the way. She was always the leader, the bold one, the one who went first into haunted houses, who tried the scary rides, who never backed down from a challenge. David walked behind her, then Megan, then Josh, bringing up the rear, making jokes to cover his nervousness, his voice echoing off the iron beams. The trestle stretched ahead of them like a tunnel of rust and shadow, 810 feet. The creek was a dark smear 90 feet below, barely visible in the failing light. The rails gleamed dully. To either side, just 8 inches of clearance before the edge, before the drop, before physics took over and gravity had its way with you. They made it about halfway across, 400 feet from either end. Exactly where you don't want to be when you hear the sound they heard next. David stopped walking. "Did you guys hear that?" Christina turned around. "Hear what?" "Someone said my name." Megan laughed, but it was a nervous laugh, brittle. "Dude, no one's out here but us." "I'm serious, I heard someone say David." Josh rolled his eyes. "You're psyching yourself out, man. It's just the wind." But then Christina heard it too. Christina, not from the trees, not from behind them, from inside her head, like her own thoughts, but in a voice that wasn't hers, a whisper that seemed to come from her own skull, from her own brain, intimate and invasive and utterly wrong. "Chris, we need to go back." David's voice was tight. "Right now." Christina opened her mouth to agree. She wanted to agree. Every survival instinct she had was screaming at her to turn around, to run, to get off this bridge immediately, but she couldn't make her legs move. The whisper had become a hum, low, vibrating, buzzing through her skull like a tuning fork pressed against bone. It wasn't painful. That was the terrifying part. It wasn't painful at all. It was compelling, like a hand on her shoulder, gently pushing her forward, like a voice in her ear saying, "Just a little farther, just one more step. It's safe. Keep going. You're fine. Just keep walking." One step, then another. She wasn't deciding to walk. Her legs were just moving, like they belonged to someone else, like she was a passenger in her own body. And then Josh screamed, "Train!" The freight train came around the bend doing 60 miles an hour, its headlight blazing like an angry god, cutting through the dusk with a beam so bright it turned the world white. The horn blared, a sound so loud it felt physical, like a fist slamming into Christina's chest. The entire trestle began to shake, vibrating under their feet, the metal groaning and screeching. They had maybe 8 seconds, maybe less. David grabbed Christina's arm and yanked her backward, physically breaking whatever spell or trance or psychological trap had locked her in place. The hum in her head shattered like glass. Run. They ran, sprinting on narrow rails, feet slipping on gravel and ancient wood, the train bearing down behind them like the end of the world. Megan was crying. Josh was screaming. David was dragging Christina, his hand locked around her wrist like a vice. They weren't going to make it. The math was simple and brutal. They were 400 feet from the end. The train was moving at 60 miles an hour. They were going to die on these tracks. David made the choice that saved their lives. Jump. They threw themselves off the side of the trestle, all 4 of them, hitting the chain-link safety fence that had been installed 15 feet below the tracks after the last death. The fence caught them like a net, rusted wire cutting into their hands and arms, their bodies slamming into metal that bent but didn't break. The train thundered overhead, so close that Christina could feel the heat radiating from its wheels, could smell burning metal and diesel, could feel the air pressure change as 10,000 tons of steel passed inches above her head. The horn was still blaring. The engineer had seen them, had hit the brakes. But freight trains don't stop on command. Physics doesn't care about panic. The train kept going, kept screaming past them. Car after car after car. An endless metal serpent that seemed to go on forever. Christina clung to the fence, fingers wrapped through the wire, the whole structure swaying with the wind of the train's passage. Megan was sobbing. Josh was bleeding from a gash on his forehead where he'd hit the fence. David was white-faced, his knuckles locked on the wire. And beneath all of that noise, beneath the train, beneath the horn, beneath her own hammering heartbeat, Christina swears she heard something else. Hooves. On metal. Slow, deliberate, scraping. Right above her on the tracks. Walking alongside the train. The train finally passed. The sound faded into the distance, leaving behind a ringing silence that felt heavier than the noise had been. They climbed down from the fence. Slid down the embankment to the creek. Stood there, shaking, bleeding, gasping for air that suddenly felt too thin. No one spoke for a long time. When they finally made it back to David's car, Christina turned and looked back at the trestle. There was something standing at the center, where they'd been standing. A dark shape silhouetted against the last light of dusk, too tall to be a person, too still to be alive. She blinked, and it was gone. Christina Butt swore she'd never go back. And she kept that promise. But years later, in an interview with a paranormal investigation blog, she said something that still haunts researchers today. She said, "When I heard my name, it wasn't just a voice. It was my voice. Like I was calling myself. Like part of me wanted to stay on those tracks. Like something inside my own head was trying to kill me, and I was agreeing with it." She said, "I don't think the Goatman pushes you. I think he makes you want to jump." So what was it? Mass hysteria? Shared hallucination? Infrasonic manipulation? Or something that knows exactly how to get inside your head and make you destroy yourself? Because 23 years later, it happened again. And this time, no one ran fast enough. The 23rd of April 2016. Raquel Bain was 26 years old. A ghost tour enthusiast from Dayton, Ohio. Visiting Louisville with her boyfriend to explore haunted locations. She ran a small YouTube channel dedicated to paranormal investigation. She'd been to abandoned asylums, haunted houses, allegedly cursed locations across 3 states. Pope Lick Trestle was on her list. Had been for months. She'd researched the legend, read the eyewitness accounts, watched videos from other urban explorers who'd crossed the bridge, and lived to post about it. She wasn't scared. She was excited. They arrived just after sunset. The timing was deliberate. Raquel wanted to experience the location at its most atmospheric, when the light was failing and shadows were long and the legend felt most real. Her boyfriend stayed at the base of the trestle with his phone camera, filming. He'd protested, said it was dangerous, said they could get arrested. But Raquel was determined. She'd come all this way. She wasn't leaving without the footage. She climbed the embankment, squeezed through a gap in the chain-link fence, and stepped onto the tracks. According to her boyfriend's testimony to police, she hesitated for a moment at the edge, looked back at him, smiled, gave him a thumbs up. Then she turned and started walking. He filmed her progress, watched her through his phone screen as she moved farther onto the trestle, getting smaller, a lone figure against the iron framework and the darkening sky. She made it about 100 feet before she stopped. Her boyfriend called out, "Raquel, that's probably far enough. Come back." She didn't respond. She just stood there, perfectly still, head tilted slightly to one side, like she was listening to something. Raquel. Nothing. And then she started walking again, faster this time, purposeful, like she'd suddenly remembered where she was supposed to go. Her boyfriend felt the first stirring of real fear. Something was wrong. The way she was moving, the way she wasn't responding. And then he heard it. The train horn. Distant but approaching. Coming from the direction Raquel was walking toward. He screamed her name. Waved his arms. Started running toward the trestle. Raquel didn't turn around. She kept walking. Steady, measured steps. Arms at her sides. Head still tilted like she was listening to a song only she could hear. The train engineer saw her. He saw a lone figure in the center of the tracks, walking toward his train, and he did everything he was trained to do. He laid on the horn. He hit the emergency brakes. He must have been screaming into his radio, begging dispatch to do something, to stop this, to make it not be happening. But freight trains don't stop. Not quickly. Not in time. Physics doesn't care about intent. Her boyfriend's video, later deleted at the family's request, shows Raquel walking forward even as the train's headlight floods the screen with white light. Shows her walking calmly, peacefully, like she's going home. Like she's being called. The horn is deafening on the recording. Her boyfriend is screaming. And beneath it all, if you turn the volume up high enough and listen through headphones in a quiet room, you can hear something else. A low hum, almost subsonic, and something that might be a voice, calling her name. Raquel Bain died instantly on impact. Her boyfriend gave his statement to police. He said she seemed entranced, that she looked peaceful, even as the train bore down on her, that she never once looked afraid, never once tried to run or save herself. He said, "It's like she wanted to be there, like something was pulling her forward and she was happy to go." The case was ruled an accidental trespassing death. The trestle was fenced off more securely. New warning signs were posted. Norfolk Southern Railway increased patrols. And people still go there. Because the legend doesn't stop. It adapts, it feeds. And Raquel Bain became another name on the list of people who heard the call and answered it. But what is the call? What's actually happening out there on that bridge? Let's talk about the science. And the horror of what might truly be going on. All right. Before we dive into the nightmare science behind all this, let's have another reality check moment. If you watched that last chapter and thought, "But I'm sure I'd be fine walking on that haunted train bridge," then the Goatman has already won. Your survival instincts are broken beyond repair. Hit that subscribe button right now as a form of life insurance. Smash that like button if you value living, and drop a comment below. What's scarier, a monster you can see, or a force that controls your mind and makes you walk toward your own death? The Goatman's reading your comments, by the way, just so you know. Now let's talk about what's actually happening to these people's brains. So, we have a legend. We have multiple deaths across 7 decades. We have eyewitnesses who report the same phenomenon again and again. A voice calling their name, a compulsion to walk forward, and a creature that appears just before tragedy strikes. How do we explain it? Let's start with the skeptical, rational explanations and work our way toward the nightmare fuel. Theory 1. It's just trespassing accidents. This is the official position. The position of the Louisville Metro Police, Norfolk Southern Railway, and anyone who doesn't want to believe in monsters. Pope Lick Trestle is an active freight line. Trains run regularly, often without warning. People trespass, they panic when they see a train, they make poor decisions under pressure, and physics does the rest. It's tragic, it's preventable, but it's not supernatural. Except this theory has problems. It doesn't explain the voices. Multiple witnesses across decades, who never communicated with each other, reporting the exact same auditory hallucination, hearing their own names called in their own voices. It doesn't explain the compulsion, the trance-like states, the way survivors describe wanting to stay on the tracks, having to be physically dragged away, and it definitely doesn't explain the creature sightings. The Boy Scout in 1953, the dozens of reports since then, the consistent descriptions, horns, hooves, yellow eyes. So let's try another theory. Theory 2. Infrasound and psychological manipulation. Now this is where it gets interesting. Infrasound refers to sound waves below the range of human hearing, typically below 20 Hz. Humans can't consciously hear these frequencies, but our bodies feel them, and they have documented, measurable effects on human psychology and physiology. In 2003, Dr. Vic Tandy, a British scientist at Coventry University, discovered something remarkable. He was working late one night in his lab when he suddenly felt overwhelming dread, a sense of presence, a visual hallucination of a gray figure in his peripheral vision. He was about to become a believer in ghosts, until he realized that a new ventilation fan had created a standing wave of exactly 19 Hz in his laboratory. The moment he turned off the fan, the ghost disappeared. Further research confirmed that infrasound at certain frequencies can cause dizziness, anxiety, fear, nausea, disorientation, feelings of presence, visual hallucinations, and altered mental states. And here's where Pope Trestle becomes really interesting. The trestle is essentially a massive resonance chamber. 810 feet of iron and steel suspended over water, wind moving through the beams, water flowing through the creek below, and most importantly, trains. Massive freight trains creating vibrations that travel through the entire structure. Could the combination of these factors create infrasonic frequencies? Absolutely. Could those frequencies cause the sensation of hearing voices? Make people feel compelled to move toward danger? Create hallucinations of creatures that aren't there? Science says yes. In 2008, a team of acoustic engineers from the University of Louisville actually measured the trestle. They found consistent low-frequency vibrations in the 1.622 Hz range, exactly the range known to cause psychological effects. They found that the vibrations intensified in specific locations, particularly the center of the trestle, right where most incidents occur. And they found that the human inner ear, when exposed to these frequencies, can create the sensation of hearing voices. Not random sounds, voices. Because the infrasound vibrates the cochlea in ways that mimic speech patterns. Your brain, trying to make sense of these phantom vibrations, creates words, names, calls, your own voice telling you to keep walking. It's not supernatural. It's physics combined with psychology. The trestle is essentially a giant psychological warfare device, and it's been operating since 1925. But here's the problem with this theory. It explains the voices. It explains the compulsion. It maybe even explains why people see things. Infrasound is known to cause visual distortions, but it doesn't explain the mutilated sheep. It doesn't explain the physical creature sightings that happened away from the trestle. And it doesn't explain why the pattern is so consistent, so specific, so targeted. Unless. Theory 3. The circus escape and local folklore. One of the oldest explanations for the Pope monster goes like this. In the early 1900s, a circus train derailed near the trestle. Among the wreckage was a sideshow freak, a Goatman hybrid, the product of Victorian-era medical experimentation or torture, displayed to audiences who paid to gawk at human deformity. When the train crashed, he escaped, fled into the woods, and he's been living beneath the bridge ever since, surviving on livestock and the occasional human who wanders too close. It's a perfect urban legend. It has sympathy for the monster. It has historical grounding. It explains the physical sightings without requiring supernatural intervention. But there's no evidence. No records of a circus train derailment near Pope Lick. No reports of a missing sideshow performer. No historical documentation whatsoever. It's a good story. But that's all it is. A story. So let's try the explanation that believers have been offering for 70 years. Theory 4. It's a demon. A literal, folkloric entity. This is where skeptics stop listening. But this is also where the evidence gets harder to dismiss. Believers point to the bridge itself. Liminal space. Threshold location. Between land and water. Between civilization and wilderness. Between Louisville and the rural areas beyond. In folklore across every culture, these threshold spaces are where supernatural entities gather. Crossroads, bridges, doorways, places between places. They point to the mythological lineage. Pan to Christian demons to American cryptids. The horn god becoming the horn devil becoming the bridge guardian. A through line of belief stretching back thousands of years. They note that every major Goatman sighting in America occurs near water, near bridges, near places where communities gather but don't quite belong. And they say, this isn't a creature. It's a force. Something that's always been here. That existed before the trestle and will exist after. Something that feeds on fear, curiosity, and the exact moment when human self-preservation fails. The trestle didn't create the Goatman. It gave him a home, a hunting ground, a place where the modern world's most dangerous creation, the train, could become his weapon. But believers have started offering a fifth theory, one that's even more disturbing than demonic predation. Theory 5. The Goatman is a guardian. What if we've had it backward this whole time? What if the Goatman isn't trying to kill people? What if he's trying to warn them? Think about it. Every witness reports hearing their name, feeling compelled to walk forward, seeing the creature before the train arrives. What if those whispers are warnings? What if that compulsion is a test? What if the Goatman is saying, turn back, this place is dangerous, this place is not for you? If you're stupid enough to ignore this feeling, stupid enough to walk forward anyway, then you deserve what happens next. Some locals have started reinterpreting the legend this way. They say the Goatman is protecting the Trestle, that he's a guardian spirit, and the people who die are the ones who failed his test, who pushed forward when everything their instincts, their fear, their own thoughts was telling them to leave. It's a gentler interpretation, almost comforting, until you remember the sheep, the violence, the yellow eyes watching from the trees, and you realize even if he's a guardian, he's not a friendly one. So which theory is correct? Here's the truth. Maybe all of them. Maybe none of them. Maybe the Pope-like monster is a combination of infrasound, folklore, psychological pressure, and something we don't have words for yet. Something that exists in the space between physics and mythology. Or maybe, and this is the answer that keeps investigators awake at night, maybe it doesn't matter what he is. Because regardless of the explanation, the pattern holds. The deaths continue. And something is out there, calling people's names in their own voices, pulling them onto those tracks. And it's hungry. Let's talk about why this legend refuses to die. After Raquel Bain's death in 2016, Pope-like Trestle made national news. Articles in major outlets, segments on paranormal television shows, warnings from law enforcement and railroad officials. Norfolk Southern Railway installed higher fences, 8 feet tall, chain link, topped with barbed wire. They posted security guards at the access points. They prosecuted trespassers with the full force of the law, criminal trespassing charges, fines, even jail time for repeat offenders. Didn't matter. Urban explorers kept coming. Paranormal investigators kept investigating. YouTubers kept filming. Thrill seekers kept seeking thrills. Because humans are wired for curiosity. We need to know. We need to test boundaries. We need to prove we're brave enough, smart enough, special enough that the rules don't apply to us. And the Pope-like monster? He's counting on it. In 2018, a paranormal investigation team from Indiana spent a night near the Trestle with professional audio equipment. They recorded hours of ambient sound, filtered it through spectrum analysis software, and found something interesting. A persistent low-frequency hum between 18 and 20 hertzes, exactly in the infrasound range, and periodically, spikes in the audio that their software interpreted as vocalizations of unknown origin. They posted their findings online. The audio files are still available if you know where to look. Put on headphones. Turn the volume up. Listen carefully. Beneath the wind and the creak and the distant highway noise, there's something else. A sound that's almost like breathing. And underneath that, something that might be words, or might be your brain trying to find patterns and randomness. Pareidolia of the ears. In 2019, a hiker photographed something on the Trestle at dawn. The photo shows the bridge in early morning light, mist rising from the creek, and in the center of the Trestle, a dark shape. Upright. Tall. The photo was posted to Reddit. It got 200,000 upvotes before the user deleted their account. The photo is still circulating. Image analysis enthusiasts have enhanced it, zoomed in, argued about what it shows. Is it a person? A trick of light? A shadow cast at a weird angle? Or is it something else? Something with horns? In 2020, the Louisville Metro Police responded to a call at 3:47 a.m. A woman had driven past the Trestle and saw someone on the tracks. She called 911, terrified that she was about to witness a death. Police arrived, searched the Trestle with flashlights, found nothing, no person, no evidence anyone had been there. But one officer reported feeling extremely uncomfortable on the bridge. Said he heard what sounded like footsteps behind him, but when he turned around, no one was there. Said he left the Trestle faster than protocol required because something felt wrong. The report is in the public record. You can request it. The Louisville Courier-Journal has covered the legend dozens of times over the years, always with the same message. It's dangerous, it's illegal, don't go there. But every article perpetuates the legend. Every warning becomes an invitation. Because the human brain is wired to hear "don't" and think, "But what if I do?" And the Goatman understands human psychology better than we understand ourselves. But here's the question that no one wants to answer. The question that keeps paranormal investigators up at night, staring at their data, wondering if they've missed something crucial. If the Goatman is just a legend, just folklore, just a combination of infrasound and trespassing accidents, why does the pattern repeat? Why do victims across 7 decades, who never met each other and never compared stories, describe the exact same experience? The whisper, the voice, the compulsion, the trance. Why do the sightings remain consistent? Horns, hooves, yellow eyes, 9 feet tall, muscular torso, goat legs. If it's just a legend, how do hundreds of witnesses independently create the same false memory? And why, despite all the scientific explanations, all the logical reasoning, all the evidence that this should just be a dangerous bridge, why does it still feel like something is out there, waiting? Okay, serious question time. If you've made it this far in the video without subscribing, the Goatman is personally offended. He's been trying to get your attention this whole time and you've been ignoring him. Don't make him come to your house. Hit that subscribe button right now. Smash that like button. Turn on notifications. And share this video with that one friend who swears they'd survive a horror movie. Let's test that theory. Also, drop a comment. Do you think the Goatman is real? Or is this just really impressive mass hysteria? He's watching your answers, just so you know. Now, let's talk about whether you should go there yourself. So you've heard the legend. You've heard the theories. You've heard the eyewitness testimony from survivors and the tragic stories of people who didn't survive. And maybe you're thinking, I want to see it for myself. Let me be absolutely clear about something. Don't. Pope Lick Trestle is private property owned by Norfolk Southern Railway. Trespassing is a criminal offense. You will be prosecuted. You will be fined. You might go to jail. The trains are real. They run regularly, without warning, without regard for who might be on the tracks. A freight train doing 60 miles an hour cannot stop in time. The engineer will see you. He will hit the brakes. He will lay on the horn. And he will kill you anyway because physics doesn't negotiate. The drop is 90 feet. If you jump, you die. If you try to hang off the side, you might fall. If you freeze on the tracks, you die. There is no safety net. There is no rescue. There is no second chance. And if the legend is true, if there really is something out there that gets inside your head and makes you want to stay on those tracks, then you're gambling with a psychological weapon you can't fight and can't predict. People die at Pope Lick Trestle. That's not folklore. That's documented fact. Multiple deaths. Multiple injuries. Multiple close calls where people were saved by pure luck and the quick thinking of friends who dragged them away. So if you're thinking about going there to test the legend, to prove you're brave, to get footage for your YouTube channel or Instagram, don't. But if you go to the base of the trestle, if you stand there legally on public land, on the trail below, if you look up at that massive iron structure at dusk, when the light is failing and the shadows are long, listen closely. Beneath the wind, beneath the creek, beneath the distant rumble of the interstate, listen for what's underneath all of that. You might hear it. That low, metallic hum. That vibration that settles into your chest like a second heartbeat. The frequency that science says is just infrasound. But that feels somehow like it has intent. And if you're very unlucky or very cursed, you might hear something else. A voice, not from the bridge, not from the trees, from inside your own head, calling your name in your own voice, saying, "Come closer." And in that moment, you'll understand. You'll understand why people climb the fence, why they walk onto the tracks, why they keep going even when every rational part of their brain is screaming at them to stop. Because it's not about courage. It's not about belief. It's not about proving anything to anyone. It's about the pull, the invitation, the call that sounds like home, like comfort, like the voice of someone who knows you better than you know yourself. And you'll realize, with perfect and terrible clarity, That the scariest thing about the Pope Lick monster isn't that he might be real. It's that you want him to be real. That part of you wants to answer that call. Wants to know what waits at the center of the bridge. Wants to test whether you're special enough, strong enough, different enough that the rules won't apply to you. That's how legends survive. That's how they feed. Not by forcing you, by making you volunteer. So here we are, the end of the story. Except it's not the end, is it? Because the Pope Lick monster is still there. Still waiting. Still calling. And people are still answering. In 2021, 3 teenagers were arrested for trespassing on the Trestle. They told police they were making a TikTok video. They'd seen other videos. They wanted to go viral. They didn't think the danger was real. One of them broke his ankle jumping off the bridge when a train came. The other 2 carried him down the embankment. They were lucky. The train wasn't going full speed. They had just enough time. They're not making TikToks at Pope Lick anymore. In 2022, a paranormal investigator from California requested permission from Norfolk Southern to conduct a professional investigation of the Trestle, with proper safety equipment, with railroad officials present, with trains halted during the investigation. The railroad denied the request, said the location was too dangerous, said they wouldn't enable what they called legend tourism. The investigator went anyway. At 2 a.m., illegally. He made it about 50 feet onto the trestle before he turned around. He won't talk about why. Won't discuss what he saw or heard or felt. Just says that some places know you're there and that he won't ever go back. His equipment recorded 4 hours of audio. He's never released it. And the legend grows, adapts, evolves. New generations discover it. New teenagers dare each other. New urban explorers add it to their lists. New believers and new skeptics argue about what's real and what's not. The Louisville Metro Police still respond to trespassing calls. Norfolk Southern still prosecutes. The fences are still there. The warning signs are still posted. And the deaths? They've slowed. Better security. More awareness. More prosecutions. But they haven't stopped. Because the Pope Lick monster is patient. He's been there since before the trestle was built. He'll be there after it crumbles into rust. He doesn't need to hunt every year. Doesn't need to kill every month. He just needs to wait. Because humans are predictable. We're curious. We're arrogant. We think we're special. That we're different. That the rules don't apply to us. And every few years, someone proves us right. Someone climbs that fence. Someone walks onto those tracks. Someone hears their name called in their own voice and decides to answer. And the legend feeds. So what's the truth? Is the Pope Lick monster real? Honestly, I don't know. Maybe he's infrasound and psychology and pareidolia. Maybe he's a demon. Maybe he's a guardian. Maybe he's all of those things simultaneously. Or maybe, and this is what I believe, maybe truth doesn't matter. Because regardless of what the Pope Lick monster is, the effect is real. The deaths are real. The pull is real. The way something about that bridge gets inside people's heads and makes them do things they would never normally do, that's real. And real is the only truth that matters. So here's my advice. Don't go to Pope Lick Trestle. Don't test the legend. Don't try to prove you're brave or special or immune. But if you're ever in Louisville, if you're ever driving on I-265 and you see the exit for Fisherville, if you're ever curious enough to take that exit and follow the signs to the trail below the trestle, stand there at dusk. Look up at that massive iron skeleton stretching across the sky. Feel the wind. Hear the creak. Listen to the sound of distant traffic. And then listen deeper, beneath all of that, for the hum, for the whisper, for the voice that knows your name. And if you hear it, if you hear that soft, compelling, impossibly intimate voice calling you forward, run. Run and don't look back, and don't tell yourself you're being irrational or paranoid or scared of nothing, because 70 years of bodies say that voice is real. And the people who listened to it, who answered it, who walked forward even as every survival instinct screamed at them to stop, they're not here to warn you. So I'm warning you instead. The Pope Lick monster is waiting. He's patient. He's hungry. And he knows your name. If you made it to the end of this story, and you're still here, hit that subscribe button right now, because we're not just hunting legends on this channel. We're hunting the truth behind them, the psychology, the science, the folklore, and sometimes the reality that's scarier than any story. Smash that like button if this story gave you chills. Drop a comment with your theory. Is the Goatman real? Or is this the most effective mass psychological weapon ever accidentally created? Share this video with your friends, especially the ones who think they're too brave to be scared. And remember, some bridges aren't meant to be crossed. Some legends exist for a reason, and some warnings should be taken seriously. Thanks for watching. Stay curious, stay safe, and whatever you do, don't answer when it calls your name.